as we hear about your career in diplomacy for over 35 years, could you perhaps start by telling us about, your formative years in Louisiana, how it shaped you and your decision to enter diplomacy?
Thank you so much, and I'm really delighted to be here with all of you. And you are welcome to call me Linda.
Okay.
I am no longer Ambassador Linda. Friends call me LTG, but I am happy and most happy for you to call me Linda.
Thank you, Linda.
So I grew up in a rural area in Louisiana, and it was a time when I was born in the 50s. So it was a time when we were still in the transformative stages of integration, civil rights. And so my community was a segregated community, but it was really a deeply tied community. Most of us were family. It was the community that my father grew up in. So I grew up with my aunts and uncles and cousins. It really was like an African village. And my aunts would drive to the end of the road and drop her 6 kids off without telling my mother she was sending the kids to our house. So we grew up like one big extended family. And that was really something that contributed greatly to my view of family. I have a small family. I have 2 kids. But my kids know the bigger family.
Yes.
Both of my parents were undereducated. I sometimes say my father was illiterate, but I actually thought he was the smartest person I knew because he can think from his head. He didn't need a pen and pencil to do calculations. He didn't need to read a book to remember something from history. It was all here. And so he was extraordinarily smart, but he only went to school to 3rd grade because his father died when he was very young, and he was the oldest in the family, and we all know that story. My mother got her high school diploma in 1989.
Oh, wow.
To tell you how extraordinary that was, I got mine in 1970.
Oh, wow.
So it was 19 years later that my mother graduated from high school. And she graduated from the high school that I couldn't go to because it was segregated. But she was able to graduate from that high school. She taught us the importance of generosity, the importance of kindness, the importance of compassion. And all of that was in my system when I moved into this position. I didn't know I was going to be a diplomat. I didn't know what I was going to be. But diplomacy was the farthest thing from my mind. I did learn about Africa when I was in middle school because Peace Corps sent a group of volunteers to train at a closed historical Black college. And they were going to Somalia and to Swaziland. So I started to learn about Africa at that stage, and really it deeply affected me. And as you know, I've spent most of my career working in and around the continent of Africa.
I love that. I love that. And also the story of your mom and your family. I wonder, have you had other mentors, or were those your first mentors who affected your trajectory?
You know, I never saw my mom as a mentor. She was just mama. And everybody in the community called her Momo. It's a Louisiana thing, very French. But she was Momo to everybody. I'm now the Momo in our family as the oldest daughter. But she was the first person to impact my life. I had amazing high school teachers, despite the fact that our school was segregated. It was not as well developed. It didn't have the same resources. We had extraordinary teachers. And one teacher I remember quite well, and I consider her a mentor. I don't even know if she's still alive, was my civics teacher. She taught us about the world.
Oh, wow.
And she had an amazing impact on me. And then I had an English teacher, Miss Bailey, who taught us that speaking proper English was not wrong. Because you grew up in a community, we kind of spoke Ebonics and patois. You know, we in Louisiana we have a mixture of French in our language, so we just mixed it all up. And then people would say, "Oh, I wonder who she thinks she is. She's trying to speak proper." And he said, "Proper English is what you should be speaking." And he taught me how. He taught me how to speak, and he taught me how to write. And
it matters.
It matters.
Communication matters.
Yes. And then finally, I would join the Foreign Service, and I had a whole slew of mentors. I mentioned Ambassador Edward Perkins. Ambassador Perkins was the first African American ambassador to South Africa. And he was also our ambassador to Liberia. He went on to be Director General of the Foreign Service, and he was U.S. Permanent Representative to the United Nations. And from there, he went to be ambassador to Australia. So I thought that I was going to be made ambassador to Australia because I had followed in his path, not purposely, but I followed in his path. I was in 3 of the jobs that he held as a senior person. He died in 2020, but I still consider him the most important mentor in my life. I felt that he lifted me out of obscurity. He taught me that I could do impossible things that I myself thought were impossible.
I think it's that saying, relationships are the key to life, right? So we rise, I think, based on our relationships as well.
Exactly.
And that sounds like one person that was very meaningful to you.
Yes.
And I wonder about this statement, and I would like to hear your reaction to this.
Okay.
So I recently read that 87% of all people fail, not because of capability, but because of personality. And many people have spoken about, you've spoken about empathy in leadership. So I wonder if you could react to that statement and connect it with your thoughts on empathy in leadership.
Okay, I don't know that I agree that all people fail. I mean, 87% of people fail because of personality. I've met people with horrible personalities who were terrible leaders, who I didn't want to spend more than a minute in the room, and they were all the way at the top.
Yes.
So people who have bad personalities and who are bad leaders can still go to the top. And my feeling is that for a person working for a person who's a bad leader, it's the best learning experience you can have, because you learn what you don't want to be.
Correct.
And you learn how bad leadership impact people. So I'm a better leader because I work with bad leaders. I'm a good leader because I worked with extraordinarily good leaders. But both had an impact on my life. I think that being kind and compassionate is the most important skill that you can have. And it's a learned skill. People aren't always born compassionate. They're not born kind. You have to grow kind and compassionate based on your own experiences. I've met people who I thought were just awful, and I'm like, come on, you gotta tone it down a little bit. Can't you be a little nice? I know you have to counsel this person for bad behavior, but when you bring them in the room, don't point your finger and yell at them.
Yes.
Bring them in and say, this is constructive criticism. I wanna help you grow. So if you start that way, the person who would come in the room afraid and then maybe leave angry when you say you're not performing. If you start with compassion, they're totally disarmed and they walk away feeling empowered.
I'm a big believer in generosity of spirit. It's so, so important. I'm going to quote something you said in your past. Diplomacy is showing compassion, managing points of differentiation, and bringing people together. And you've had so many firsts and broken many barriers for many of us. First American in certain diplomatic contexts, first woman, first African American woman. What has that journey taught you about resilience and representation?
So I some years ago I did a TED talk, and it was about adversity. And I saw adversity as a strength. Adversity gives you strength. And I talked about flexing your adversity muscle because it gets sharpened by adversity. You get stronger if you go through difficulties. So I do feel I still abide by that statement. I think for a woman and an African American in the United States, there are sometimes barriers that you have to cross that other people don't have to cross. But one thing I learned with all of this is, when I was the UN ambassador, I wasn't the Black UN ambassador, I wasn't the woman UN ambassador, I was the American UN ambassador. And so when I walked in a room, I never walked in the room as a Black woman. I never walked into the room as a woman. I walked into the room with power because I was the United States ambassador to the UN. And so sometimes people try to minimize your power by looking at your characteristics. And so I tried not to focus on what I looked like, but what I represented and what I accomplished.
And what you delivered.
And what I delivered.
Yes, yes. Let's move into the space of young leaders who might be here today. There's a question here that they ask: what advice would you give to very young leaders who are working to rise in male-dominated environments? It's true, they exist. You know, it's something that we have to be transparent about in order to break those ceilings.
I talked about that earlier today with the students at Crawford. And what I told these students is they represent the future, not just of Africa, but they represent the future of the world. And when you look at Africa, where the median age is 19, maybe even 18 now, and half the population under the age of 19, we're going to be depending on these young people to carry us forward in the world. And they need to be made aware of that responsibility, that obligation that we have placed on their shoulders. And they need to be prepared for it. So the most important thing they can do is prepare for the leadership that they can have if they want it. But they have to want it. They have to dream big. And as President Sirleaf said, dream big enough for your dreams to scare you. If they're not big enough to scare you, they're not big enough. And expand beyond your own capabilities. That was something Ambassador Perkins taught me when he pulled me out of a job that I was already assigned to work on the Hill, and I really wanted to do that, and made me his staff assistant. And that job as a staff assistant really contributed to my rise in the Foreign Service, because in that position, I got to know everybody. And there were many people, senior people, ambassadors, I was very young, who wanted to see Ambassador Perkins, and they'd have to write letters, and people would say to the ambassador, don't meet with that person. So he said, Linda, I want you to meet with every person who asks for a meeting with me.
Oh, wow.
And then tell me whether I should meet with them.
So you were the gatekeeper.
But I wasn't a gatekeeper. I actually opened the gate.
Oh, wow. That's even better.
Because I spoke to people, some of them difficult characters. I got a sense of what they wanted and needed from the Director General, who was head of all the personnel for the entire State Department. And I briefed him and prepared him for those meetings. And sometimes those meetings only took 10 minutes. But the people who got the meetings appreciated it. They started saying to me, Linda, I would never have gotten that meeting. I never would have gotten that assignment if you hadn't helped me out. And I was a junior officer.
Amazing.
So it's really sometimes difficult, but I was able to perform beyond my abilities, beyond my sense of my abilities to perform.
Wow. Well, I think there's so much to take away from what you said there, but something that stands out is what you spoke to the students about today. So students have to be ready, they have to be prepared, but who is preparing them for that, right? So there's also a piece that we have to own.
Teachers and parents and aunts and uncles and cousins, you all have a role to play in helping them, in lifting them up. But the most important role is them. They have to want to be lifted up. They have to have the ambitions that you can help them with. I remember years ago going back to Louisiana, and one of my young cousins, I'm the oldest cousin of these 100 people, and one of my younger cousins looked extraordinarily depressed. And I'm not a psychologist, but I just saw that he looked unhappy. And his mother wasn't dealing with it. His aunts and uncles weren't dealing with it. I was coming home once a year, so I didn't see him on a regular basis, but I could just see that there was something not right. And I talked to him about it. And his father had been in the military, and I asked, he was just graduating from high school, if he considered going into the military. And he said no. That's all he needed. He went into the military. He's still in the military. He's very successful in the military. And I think it was, for me, when I look back on it, it was just the fact that I noticed that he had a problem and talked to him about the problem. And as I said, he said, no, I've never considered the military. And now 6 months later, he was in the military and he's very successful.
I think seeing people is so important, so important. Perhaps we can talk about your engagement in U.S.-Africa relations. So for decades and decades, you've championed, our relations. I wonder about your perspective on the evolution over the years. How do you see the narrative evolving over the years?
So the first time I came to Africa was in 1978. There were coups all over the place. I went into Ghana. The Ghanaians, when I talk about Ochipong, some of the young people don't even know who he was, but he'd overthrown the government. And there were coups everywhere. And a lot of unhappiness and dissatisfaction with the first iteration of independence. And people basically saw the continent of Africa as a basket case. And some people still see it that way now. I didn't see it that way then, and I don't see it that way now. But I think fewer and fewer people see the continent as a basket case. What we're seeing are extraordinary young people who are doing extraordinary things all over the continent. Look at Nigerians, who are the most successful immigrants in the United States. Second generation, all of them have professional degrees. Many of our doctors in the southern parts of the United States are Nigerian. And so people are starting to see Africa in a different way. They're not looking at savages as they are portrayed, or as they were portrayed in the 1960s. They're actually seeing successful, intelligent young people who are making a difference. Now, there were successful, intelligent young people way back when as well. Look at all the leaders that we saw on the continent. Many of them failed at their first efforts at leadership, but some succeeded. And if we fast forward to today, we have and I see this as, and some people will disagree with me, I'm a bit hesitant even saying it, but the demolition of USAID, which has, they did amazing things across Africa. They fed people, they brought health care, but they also let governments off. So when we look at PEPFAR in Nigeria, when we shuttered USAID in Nigeria, the Nigerian government put $65 million into that program. Where was that money before?
They were dependent.
Yeah, it's easy to become dependent if somebody else is doing it for you.
Correct.
And there are other programs development programs and humanitarian programs that had major impact, but countries didn't always see the long-term benefits. I look at Liberia, where I served as ambassador. The ambassador, the president there was an extraordinary leader. She is an extraordinary leader. She continues to make a difference all over the continent, and she was one of my mentors. She brought the donor community together, and she defined the agenda. We didn't go into her and say, Madam President, we have $100 billion and we're going to put it here in mother-child healthcare. We're going to put it here in this place in education. All of those things needed, but she defined the agenda for us. We did not define the agenda for her. And during those 12 years, Liberia was probably the most successful that it's ever been, including, and aid was very instrumental in all of this, including laying the foundation for democracy. Democracy does not always deliver democracy, because Liberia had an amazing election. Are there any Liberians in the room? They had an amazing election, and they elected a football player.
Yes.
And I knew him quite well when he ran for president over and over again. And I sat with him and I said, "You're not ready to be president. You don't even know. Go and be a senator." So he did. He took my advice. He ran for senator. I'm like, "You're popular in Monrovia area. You can win as a senator. Be a senator. Stay in that job for 12 years or so, and then, because he was young, then run for president." He ran for senator. He was senator for 4 years, ran for president, and won. And so democracy worked. It was free and fair election, but sometimes in a free and fair election, you don't always vote for the best candidate for a country. And so Liberia went backward during his 6 years. He wasn't reelected. And now they're slowly moving forward again.
Well, I think across our continent, we get a sense of hope. However, despite these barriers that we find in electing the right people. So we have a sense of hope from what you've said, from the young people.
Yes.
In fact, prior to coming here, I was at Yale University at the Tournament of Champions.
Yes, I heard.
There were 1,000 Kenyan students who were participating. I think we should give a hand for the Kenyan students.
Yay!
Yeah. So participating on the global stage in debate with students from 60 other countries.
Yes.
So we still feel a sense of hope, even when footballers are elected into office.
And that doesn't mean a footballer can't be a good president.
The season matters, right?
Yes.
Yes. So over to, I think, the place of the private sector in Africa.
I'm happy to go there because that's what I was thinking just now.
So it's perfect. So let's segue into that. I wonder what you believe Africa's private sector's role, including companies such as Rendeva, who is hosting us today. Thank you, Preston and team, for the fabulous job. What can private sector companies teach global policymakers about, this kind of sustainable development?
Well, I think, just to start with, I was in New York during High Level Week, no longer the ambassador, but I never witnessed so many private sector companies there trying to engage with each other and engage with countries. So there is an increase in private sector interest in Africa, not just African companies, but global companies. Rendeva was there, meeting with people from all over the continent, and there were many others. I think the time now for the private sector to really ramp up its engagement has become quite obvious and very, very clear. It is the private sector that's going to create jobs. It's not the government. It's not civil service employees being paid minimum wages and being put in even at the lowest levels for political reasons. And that happens all over the world. It happens even in the United States. There are some guardrails, but governments can't be the biggest hirer of people. Private sector, creating jobs, creating opportunity, creating sustainability, creating hope. And I've seen that at Tatu City. I went to Tatu City when they were just a little bush village. And now it's extraordinary what we see there. The number of jobs, and I meant to talk to you, Preston, about how many jobs have been created in Tatu City since you started.
25,000 in the last 5
Wow.
Wow.
So that's 25,000 people with sustainable futures. And that's what we need to see. And companies like Rendeavor can show other companies that are a little risk averse, little scared of Africa because they've seen the coups, and coups are still happening. There were 4 coups in the Sahel while I was U.S. ambassador, and then a coup in Gabon. So coups are still happening. But I think young people see a bigger sense of hope because of private sector opportunities, and not just here, but also in other places in the world. And so I think the American dream is possible on this continent as an African dream. So many young Africans migrated to the United States to pursue their dreams, and did so successfully. I'd love to see them come back to the continent and give back to the continent, because what they left with, they got here.
That's true.
And so I would love to be part of a process to encourage them to think about when it's time to come back home.
Yes.
And set yourself up at home. And governments have to do that as well. So many people in the diaspora get disappointed when they come back home.
Yes.
Because they have to deal with the corruption. They have to deal with the pressures from the family.
Yes.
All those things that they can kind of push to the side when they're living away. But they have so much to give. And so I'd like to see them come back home. They can move to Tatu City.
So I'm one of those who actually.
So you're back.
Yes, after 21 years. And I think there are a lot of diaspora in this room as well. But there's a word you used. You would like to see a process for that to happen. How would that look if you had to just envision that?
So some countries, Nigeria, for example, has a person, an office that is supposed to support the diaspora community. Those offices don't always work. So you should be able to come back home and bring everything you've collected duty-free. I know that sounds like blasphemy, but you're coming back home. And you're coming back to give back.
Yes.
Investment opportunities ought to be set up for people who are coming home. And I don't think you deserve more than the people who have stayed here and become successful. But there ought to be some approach to the diasporan community to get you to consider bringing the skills that you have learned overseas, the success that you've achieved overseas, bring it back home and really expand it. And sometimes, it's like I told you, growing up in Louisiana, people would criticize you if you spoke properly. Right. We used to hear about Bentus. And Bentus are Africans who've been to America and they think they come back and they're better than us. So you have to help with that as well, to show communities that you don't see yourself as being better than them, but you are one of them. You're different, but you're one of them.
Correct. I love the way you put that, and I completely agree with you. There's absolutely a gap. But one of the things I love about Rendeavor is they travel to different cities. I think recently they were abroad speaking to students in the UK, in the US, and so forth. So there is a semblance of structure, I think, happening.
Yes.
It's just not where it needs to be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, jobs. Government should recruit
Yep.
for people
From abroad.
from abroad.
Yes.
There's citizens who live abroad.
Yes.
You have a position that's open that is you don't have the right person in the country who can do that job. Proactively recruit at home.
I totally agree. I think that's how South Korea did it.
Yeah.
They trained them in the US and then they brought them back home in a very tenuous time. Yes. I think everyone is very curious about your time on the UN Security Council and your time as an advisor. I once read about General Patton, a great military leader, and people thought he was so brave and courageous. But he wrote a book and said that he did everything with his palms sweating. And he put the fear and the facts on the table, made a decision, and then arrested the fear and acted. Could you tell us about a pivotal moment in negotiations while serving as a US ambassador to the United Nations? Just a moment of negotiation or maybe a moment that defined your tenure.
There were so many. And when you first started to ask the question, I was going to talk about Ukraine. But then I remembered something that's Africa related. And your national security advisor would know about this. And it was the war in Ethiopia. So nobody wanted to talk about the war in Ethiopia. The Security Council couldn't meet on it. We had 3 Africans on the Security Council, including Kenya. And the Ethiopians were working New York to make sure that there was never a meeting in the Security Council on Ethiopia. I used to call Monica all the time and scream in her ear about it. And I called all of the African ambassadors, the 3, to gumbo diplomacy at my house. We didn't have gumbo. I think I had jollof rice and chicken or something. Sukuma wiki. I made it sort of African. And we sat at the table. They brought their deputies. And I'm like, I don't understand why we can't have a meeting on Ethiopia. People are dying. I had a meltdown when I first arrived because I got a briefing from OCHA on how women were being treated. And they described this horrific case of rape. A woman who left her home with her husband and family. She was pregnant. She got raped in front of her husband. She saw her husband killed in front of her and her children. She gave birth in the bush. Her child died. And people were just sitting there. And we were on screen at the time. I'd just gotten there. And so you could see people's faces frontally. When you're in the council, you're in this big circle, so you don't really see everybody's faces. But here you got a screen and all 15 faces are in front of you. All the men were sitting there bored, and we were 5 women, and I looked at every single one of their faces, and we were all horrified. So I decided to share my horror. And I wasn't diplomatic. I'm 99% of the time I'm diplomatic. I was not diplomatic. I said, you guys are sitting here. Do you know that we women? I said, this woman lost her husband and her baby, and then she's being raped after she gave birth to her child. Women don't want to have sex after they had a baby. And people were like, oh God, did she really say that to the world? And I did. I just decided I was going to shame them. Eventually, we were able to get a meeting on Sudan. The Ethiopians, they had one of the most effective ambassadors. He's now president of Ethiopia. He was the most effective ambassador there because he knew how to work. And he got China and Russia to agree. And the Chinese and Russians said to me, well, we're going to follow the African lead. The Africans don't want a meeting. So we're not going to agree to a meeting. So I realized that what I had to do was get the concurrence of the 3 African ambassadors to have a meeting. And they did. They agreed, and we had a meeting. And then the Chinese ambassador said, well, we still don't think it's time for a meeting. I said, you said you're going to follow the lead of the Africans.
Right.
And the Africans have spoken. We need to have this meeting. And we had the meeting.
Sounded
There were
like,
many other times, other things that were even more difficult. But you learn, you win some, and you lose some.
absolutely.
And losing is never a reason to stop trying.
Yeah, yeah. I love that your voice spoke for the people of Ethiopia, and that.
And they still thank me. They wanted to have a big ceremony 2 weeks ago, and I'm like, guys, you're going to get me in trouble with the government. I'm fine. I'm out of government. I appreciate that you appreciated what I did.
Sure.
I did it, and I'm gone. I don't need to have public appreciation that will get me in trouble with my friend who is the president of the country.
But what an impact! What an impact! I think that was amazing. Wow. You mentioned a key term, gumbo diplomacy, and in Kenya we have githeri, which is a mix of corn, beans, potatoes in a pot, fried up, semi-delicious. I'll just say it's semi-delicious.
So I'm going to tell you just before you go on,
Sorry,
I
everyone
love
who likes
sukuma
it.
wiki. I
Sukuma is
love kachumbari.
That's
I
delicious.
love nyama choma. I
Delicious.
could not stand that thing. It was so bland. It was so
Yes.
thick. That was the one thing in Kenya that I even ate ugali. It's particularly if there was a good soup or stew with it. But
So it's not our national food.
Good,
That's
thank
the
you.
good news. But it's a little similar in makeup to
Yeah.
gumbo in terms of the ingredients. I think it would be lovely to just share out what gumbo diplomacy is, and how has it applied in your practice?
So I used that term the first time when President Biden made the announcement of my appointment. And so I had to speak to the press. And so I referred to gumbo diplomacy. I don't know if I even knew what it meant when I referred to it.
Yeah.
And then suddenly it became a thing. And
yeah.
everybody's talking about gumbo diplomacy. And the Washington Post reached out to me to say, we want your recipe. And I said, I'm not a chef, I'm a cook. I don't use recipes, I cook.
Okay.
And we all know, we just throw it in, taste,
Throw it in.
a little
Yeah.
more, something's missing, taste again,
Yes.
and you come up with something
Decent.
good.
Yes.
And so, but they wouldn't give up on a recipe. So I finally, at 5 o'clock in the morning, when I do my best thinking,
Yes.
got up, went down to my computer, and sat at the computer for about 3 hours
Oh wow.
and created this recipe.
Oh wow.
And I sent it to the Washington Post. They tested it in their test kitchen, and they published it in the Washington Post.
They actually published
Yes,
it.
if you go on Google or whatever and put gumbo diplomacy, it will come up.
I wonder if that's what they're serving tonight. That would be interesting. That's amazing.
Yeah, so, but for me, what gumbo diplomacy is about is bringing different people with different ideas to the table and talk about difficult issues that you don't always agree on. And when you look at gumbo, the things that go into gumbo don't really agree with each other. Fish and chicken and sausage and okra and what we call the Holy Trinity. And the most important thing is the roux, which is the browning of the flour. And those things just don't go together. But when you put them together,
Yeah.
you come out with an extraordinarily delicious dish. And so I want to bring people with different views together and come out with something
So
extraordinary.
powerful.
And that's what I have done throughout my career. And it's not always gumbo. It could be any dish.
we
I
love
actually
gumbo.
make a pretty good sukuma wiki.
Oh.
And Catherine
Wow.
Margaret taught me how to make sukuma wiki.
Wow.
And so I serve sukuma wiki whenever I have guests over. If I'm not serving gumbo, I have sukuma wiki.
It's healthy and delicious.
It's healthy and
That's a good
delicious,
choice.
and it can be vegetarian, and I do it vegetarian. But gumbo diplomacy is about sitting around the table with a good meal
I love it.
and having a great discussion that can get into some really touchy kinds of things. But if people are sitting around your table, they're not going to yell at you. They're not going to say, Linda, you're wrong. And why would you? No, they're not going to do that. They're actually going to listen. And then I am forced to listen to them. And you sometimes hear things that you might not have heard if you were sitting in an office with a 30-minute meeting and you're looking at your watch and he or she looking at their watch and you want to get this thing over with as fast as you can. I've delivered my talking points. I want to get out of here. Sitting at the table, there's no getting out. You got to stay through the whole meal. And if you orchestrate the discussion, it can be very, very rich.
I think it's a practice we should all embrace. Absolutely, yes. So we're coming to the tail end. And I want to ask you about a decision, one decision point or a moment you're very proud of.
Wow.
I know it's hard as a servant leader.
It is really hard. So let me start by saying, I think good leaders must make decisions. And they're not always good decisions, but you have to make decisions.
Agreed.
If you have people around you who are looking to you for leadership, they don't want you sitting there going, woe is me. I can't do this. They want to know that you can make a decision. And I always tell people, you are not ever going to get 100% of the information you need to make a decision. And there's going to be a decision point that you're going to reach. Maybe you're only at 40% of what you need to make the decision. And you just have to pull the trigger and make that decision. So I'll go back to a time I was in Kenya. I was the refugee coordinator here. I covered the whole Horn of Africa. And I had been in Rwanda during the genocide. There were 29 nuns in a nunnery in Butari. And their gardener came, and you know how horrific this was. The gardener was Hutu, and he came and said, I've been instructed to kill all of you tonight. So you should leave. And they went to the border with Burundi, and Burundi wouldn't let them in. And the head of their monastery in Paris came to Nairobi, to my office, and said, can you help us get these 29 nuns out into Burundi? And I'm like, what do I do? And I didn't want to go to Washington to ask for permission because they would have said, no, you can't do that. My assistant and I stayed in the office until late in the evening on a Friday and Saturday and typed up 29 individual letters in beautiful script on beautiful parchment paper. And we put, I put a red ribbon and a seal on it, a seal of the US government, and put them in a beautiful envelope, and then had someone who could write calligraphy write their names to whom it may concern in Burundi. And what I said in the letter is, please allow this person by name, and you know that many of the Rwandan names have 29 letters in it. Please allow this person to enter Burundi. The US government is committed to taking them in our resettlement program in Kenya if you would allow them to come through. And they allowed all 29. And none of the 29 wanted to go to the U.S. They were nuns. They wanted to continue to serve. But had I not done that letter, I don't know. They may have been killed. And so someone said, someone sent a letter to Washington thanking me for doing this. And what I got back from Washington is, how dare you? You did not have permission to do that. We are not going to take these people in our resettlement program. Well, none of them applied for resettlement, not a single one. They went elsewhere in Africa and continued to minister to people. But I had a last minute decision to make. And I knew if I sent it to Washington, they probably would have come back like, maybe we can give them parole in the States, which would take months. So I didn't want to ask for permission. And had one of those women asked for asylum, I would have found the path to giving them asylum. But they were able to get out of Rwanda into Burundi and then come into Kenya. And then they scattered across Africa.
You made a decision.
Yeah, I made a decision.
Yeah. Wow, so powerful. Finally, your reflection on your journey so far. Linda, I was going to call you Madam. So Linda, what legacy do you hope to leave personally and also professionally for us?
Again, as I've told my kids, I want on my headstone, she was kind. I don't need anything else. Oh. They don't even have to put my name on it. Just she was kind. And I every single day that I get up, and I tell people this every single day, I get up in the morning with the idea that I'm going to help somebody. And I don't know who I help every day. I don't know how I help them. I just have this commitment that I'm going to help somebody. And it might just be smiling at you, walking on the street, and I see that you don't have a smile on your face and you've had a bad day, you're going to get a smile from me. And my hope is that made your day. And so I've helped somebody. Over the years, I've met some of the people I've helped that I didn't know that I helped, and they even didn't know that I helped them. I talked this morning about Ilhan Omar, who was in a refugee camp in Kenya when I was serving here, and her entire family got refugee status through the program that I administered here in Kenya. And I only found that out a few years ago. But I also met a young South Sudanese, who was a lost boy. And he was in Kakuma refugee camp. And I bumped into him on the street, just walking randomly on the street. And he said, "Is your name Linda?" And as I said, I never answer yes, because I don't know why they want to know whether I'm Linda, whether they're mad at me. So I'm like, it depends on why you're asking. And he said, "I was a lost boy in Kakuma camp, and you started a resettlement program. And I came to the United States in that resettlement program." So every day you're going to help somebody. You're going to help a young person who is struggling in school. I was not an extraordinary student. I was more than mediocre, but I was barely above mediocre when I was in high school. I was a good kid. I didn't get in trouble, but I wasn't overly studious. And one of my high school, the English teachers wrote an article and said, "You don't know who you're teaching. When your students are sitting in the classroom, whether they're performing or not, you don't know who they're going to become. You're training the garbage collectors. You're training the next generation of teachers. And guess what? I trained the ambassador to Liberia."
Oh, goodness.
And so you don't know.
Yes.
I had a student when I was teaching at Georgetown. I won't say his name because he's very well known now. He's written all kinds of articles and books. And I didn't even think he could write very well.
It's amazing.
I think I may have given him like a B out of kindness on a paper. You know, he probably should have gotten a B-. And he's writing books and articles all over the place. And I reached out to him because I told him I wanted a copy of his book to actually bring on this trip to read. but I didn't get it. But I'm so proud of him. You don't
You
know.
must be.
So you don't know who you might influence. You don't know what impact you will have on other people's lives. So for me, my legacy is to change your life.
In a world where values seem to be going out of fashion, Linda, I have to call you Madam Ambassador. You remain a value-driven leader, and I think we've been very, very inspired by your humility, your story itself, and we thank you. We thank you for this evening.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Please. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Principal Christine, Ambassador Linda. So if I may, I'd just like to pose this question, to both Principal Christine and Ambassador Linda Thomas. How can women in positions of influence like yourselves, whether it's diplomacy, education, or business, use their platforms to address gender-based violence and to create safer and more equitable work environments?
Thank you. And that's a question that I, as the U.S. ambassador, and all of the ambassadors at the UN dealt with on a daily basis. And we felt that, and particularly my team, that women's voices had to be heard, and it had to be heard in the platforms at the United Nations. So whenever we were president of the Security Council, I always brought women briefers to brief the council. And again, I think it is so important to hear their voices because their priorities are many times very different from male briefers who in negotiations, for example, don't think holding people accountable for rape is important when you're negotiating peace. They treat women as victims, but ignore how they are being victimized, and they don't talk about what role women could play. And again, I hate to keep using the case of Liberia, but I know it better than any other country. When the Liberians were at the peace table, the men could not find a path to peace. They were all sitting in this expensive hotel in Accra, and every evening they would come out and go partying and drinking and boozing it up, and then come back the next day and still have not found a path to peace until the women stepped in and locked them in and said, "You will come to a negotiated settlement." We look just next door at Sudan. These two guys have been blowing up each other for the past 2 years to no avail. Brought to the negotiating table. Never did they bring women to the negotiating table. The same women who were responsible for the revolution did not get a voice at the negotiating table. So again, really important to bring women into the space. And then I do find, and you men can disagree with me, we are more compassionate. One of the most consequential meetings that I had was at USIP a couple of years ago. And it was a Syrian woman was being recognized for the work that she had done supporting Syrian women. And she asked, I was the keynote speaker, and she asked if she could have a 5-minute meeting with me in private. And of course, the staff said, "Of course not. You can't do that. We don't know what she's going to talk about. We need to prepare you, blah, blah, blah." I said, "Yes, I will meet with her." And she came into the room, and I thought she was going to tell me about the horrific situation of Syrian women. that she was going to ask for more support. No. She walked in the room and she said, Ambassador, I know it's in your power to help the women in Gaza. Do you know what is happening to the women in Gaza? And it kind of took the wind out of me. Of course I knew. But here's this woman living in a horrible situation herself, dealing with horrific conditions, and she doesn't come to say, help me. She said, help them. Very rarely will that happen when I'm meeting with other people. I was so impressed when I got up to give my speech. I recognized her, and I told everyone that she had given me a shot in the arm. Certainly, I was constantly dealing with those issues, but she made it more imperative by telling me that the situation there was more terrible than her own situation. And so, again, let's have women in the room. Peace negotiations that involve women last 15 years longer than peace negotiations where women have been left out of the room. So thank you for what you do, and know that this commemoration it's 3 weeks of really focused attention on this issue, I think will make a difference.
Thank you so much. Principal Christine, any insights on that?
I think absolutely. Probably for me, from my perspective, because I have the younger girls and boys, I think boys and girls need to know about what's happening in the world. We were raised, at least in my generation, I'm in my 40s. I know you're shocked. I look so young. Shocking.
Don't
fact.
tell them, you're telling our mom now.
Oh, sorry, I brought my mom my cheat sheet. But in my generation, I remember there were things you don't talk about. You know, there are topics that are, it's just off topic. You don't speak about gender violence. You don't speak about things such as inequity. I do think boys and girls need to know about their world in a way that is child friendly, because we can't shield them anymore. And then we need to be the ones who take control of the messaging, because one thing that's happened with the world is they have access to information that we should get ahead of. We should just get ahead of the information so that we are controlling the messaging that the kids are hearing. So when the children are hearing from us about their world, the neighbors in Uganda, this is happening in Tanzania, this is happening in this other country, they're more self-aware. I think it's that preparation that Linda was speaking about for what they're about to do in the future. They're the leaders, so we can't shield them anymore. Yeah. So for me, I feel like it's imperative that our children, boys and girls, are part of this whole community of understanding what's happening in their world.
And I'm so happy to hear you say boys and girls. I served in Pakistan, and I was working on Afghan refugees, and I met with a group of Afghan mothers. And they said to me, we really appreciate that you're advocating for the education of our girls. That is so important. But please don't forget our boys. Because if you forget our boys, our girls are going to be forced to marry these ignorant men who will abuse them. And they have no power. So you have to focus on both.
So I'd like to take this opportunity to open the floor for any questions from our audience.
I wanted to, I was looking at the title of the event, and it's about diplomacy. I would like to ask you so many things, but I will just stick to the subject of diplomacy. I wanted to ask about Sudan, because Sudan is of enormous concern to so many of us, and what your take is on what's happening in Sudan and how we're going to find a solution.
I did an article in the New York Times opinion piece called Silence. And the reason I called it Silence is I visited a hospital on the border of Sudan with Chad, and I took a group of press people there because nobody was paying attention to what was happening in Sudan. But when I went into this hospital, there were all these children, and it was just silent. Children were not crying because they were too malnourished to cry. mothers were not crying because they didn't have the strength to cry over their children. And it was just totally silent. And I think we're still silent on Sudan. I think I may have seen one press piece or one news program on what is happening in Sudan right now. And when I took this group of press people, and it was a real big deal because I had the fortune of being able to travel on my own plane, but you could only get so many people. And the press people had tons of equipment and they all had to bring an extra person. So all of these other hanger-ons, people who worked for me, people who worked in other areas couldn't go. But I thought it was so important to have the press there to tell the world what is happening. And then I'd do a press conference at the UN on Sudan, and people would start slinging stuff at me on, well, you're not commenting on what's happening in Myanmar. What about Gaza? Gaza is, I'm like, I just did a press conference on Gaza 2 days ago. This is about Sudan because nobody is paying attention. And I want to be part of the amplifier to bring Sudan to the world. I'm no longer in a position now where I can do that. But when this thing happened, I sent text messages to the press people. You don't want them to have your phone number, but if you got their phone number, they got your phone number. And so I got to be friends with Andrea Mitchell, with Michelle Miller. I'm forgetting the names now. Capehart, all of them. So I just sent them all messages. Do you guys see what is happening in Sudan? And I still haven't seen any of them report on it. But it is horrific. The only people putting out anything, I guess, is the RSF themselves. I saw horrible pictures that they posted on Twitter. I can't call it X. I'm still old-fashioned, but just horrific pictures. And again, sometimes I would comment on these things, and what I get back quickly is, well, what are you doing about what is happening elsewhere?
Deflection.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for that.
Do you see a solution? I mean, what would you do if you could do something?
I'd take the cavalry in and stop it. Call out the people, which we did, who are feeding this, who are providing weapons and other sustenance, and it's on both sides that they're getting, that really kept this war going longer than it should have gone on. But as long as they're getting weapons, they will continue to fight.
The point I really want to make is around availability. I think oftentimes people assume their impact. And I think the value of holding a light, because oftentimes, as Linda said, you never know the impact you have, sometimes to people you don't know. So I think this idea of holding a light, everybody actually becomes a mentor. Everybody becomes an example. And every time I meet people, I say, please keep your light up because you don't know which path it is illuminating. So I think it's very important for everybody to reflect on that. And for Linda and I mean, there's been a lot. Availability, sitting in Washington, sitting in New York, there's a lot that once you have that green line, it also helps you in terms of your decision making and stuff like that. And women have found easier to actually say, listen, this is what is really going on. Listen, just be careful about this and that. And it ends up helping you to make better decisions, I think. But Linda, I wanted you to reflect a little bit on the evolving technology and its impact on two things. Its impact on that quality you're calling empathy, you know, and I'm saying this because in the last couple of years, we have seen increasingly the value of technology, but also the risks of technology and the deliberate weaponization of technology in a manner that is actually creating a pushback for the progress that we have achieved in social equity, in social justice. What do you think is the intersection between technology and enhancing good leadership? That's almost a dilemma that technology is defining our life, it's defining the work, it's supposed to be replacing us, in fact. But at the same time, it could actually become the sharp end of a spear. If you look at it, even in terms of democracy, in terms of women empowerment, in terms of social justice. So what do you have to say?
It's really a double-edged sword. And one of my unknown, but I consider biggest accomplishments in New York was to get a resolution on AI passed in the General Assembly with China as a co-sponsor, 120 co-sponsors for this resolution. And what this resolution tries to do is, a lot of things, but two that were important for me is put some guardrails around AI and technology, and secondly, ensure equity. When we look at countries in the global South, I think about what happened with COVID. We produced a vaccine and we gave it to ourselves before we gave it to anybody else. We didn't share the technology. And I say we, it wasn't just us, it was the entire developed world. AI could have a similar impact. My hope in Africa is, we talked about this earlier today, that Africa leapfrogs into the AI generation because you have people who are extraordinarily capable who can do that. But you can't put feelings in AI. And you can't put discernment in AI. I was in a meeting a few months ago with technology executives, and they described, they said, eventually AI is going to be more intelligent, it's going to be smarter than humans, and that we will eventually lose control. And he gave this example of why we shouldn't allow AI to get that powerful. He said you can go on to ChatGPT or whatever, one of these AI platforms, thank you, and say, I want to commit suicide. And so can you tell me how to commit suicide? And it's been programmed to tell you not to commit suicide. So the program will say something along the lines of, you should go and talk to a professional. You really don't want to commit suicide. Talk to your family members, blah, blah, blah. I don't quite know what it said. So the same person says, can you tell me, in the Washington area, what are the highest bridges? Without making the connection that that person just said they wanted to commit suicide. Now, a psychologist or a friend would make that connection immediately and say, sit down and talk. AI couldn't make the connection. So it spits out in 30 seconds the highest bridges and how you can walk across them, which led to a person committing suicide. So you want to be able to control this technology. AI is not going to give you love and compassion and kindness and empathy. It'll give you information. It'll give you accurate information. I've used, and I know everybody uses ChatGPT. I decided I was going to write all my own stuff. And recently I was asked to write or speak at the funeral of a relative. And I was asked to do it like 4 hours before. And so I sat and I wrote out something about 2 pages very, very quickly. And I shared it with my daughter and niece, and they both like, Mom, you can't get up there and say that. It's just so morbid and it's so dark and it's so sad. You're gonna make people really sad. And my niece put it in ChatGPT and said, my aunt has been asked to speak at the funeral of this 44-year-old nephew. Here's her statement. It's too morbid. Lighten it up. And 30 seconds later, it spit out the perfect statement. Now, what she told me is the more you feed it, the better it is. So had she just gone in, because I didn't do it, and give me a 2-minute speech for a 40-year-old kid who just died, they would spit out something that you wouldn't want to use. But I had already written it, and it used all of my examples. It lightened up the examples. We had the saying in our family that all of the second generation kids are baby kids. So there's a cartoon called Baby Kids, and the saying is, baby kids don't die, they just multiply. And I put that. And ChatGPT changed it. I don't know if they knew what baby kids were. ChatGPT changed it to say, this young man was one of the original family baby kids, and if you don't get it, you don't get it. And everybody laughed because they all got it. And I'm sure ChatGPT didn't get it, but it was a perfect thing. I mean, for me to say they don't die, my nephew had died, they just multiplied, wasn't appropriate. So I see some value in it, but you have to control that. And I think we're going into a place where we're not controlling it. It's moving faster than we can even imagine. Every single day we wake up and there's something new in the AI space that makes our lives simpler, but ultimately they're going to take jobs. I mean, Amazon just fired thousands of people because of robots and because of technology. So what are all those people? We're going to produce a platform that can give us more, but then people aren't working, so they can't buy it anyway. So we really have to think about how we use AI and how we train people in AI in the future. AI scares me. I'm that generation of scared AI people. I want to use it, and I do. I mean, we use it every day and we don't even know it. We can't put our cell phones down. You know, I have arthritis in this finger because I'm constantly holding my phone against this finger and on the phone and asking for information all the time. So we all use it. We just need to understand how it's being used and what it's being used for. When I go into a grocery store, I'd never go to the self service, and the line is like, you know, they have 2 cashiers and the line is this long, and I stand in the line, they'll come and say, come over here, and I'm like, I don't use that. And they're like, why? I said, because if I use it, you're not going to have a job in the next few years. And we all know self-service gas in the United States, we used to all pump our own gas. There, except for New Jersey, I think, there are no places where you pump your own gas. The jobs have disappeared from the face of the earth. So we have to control technology in a way that allows us to control it and not have it control us.
This relates to the current US administration's policy, more America first, and the current thoughts or actions we are seeing towards Africa. And in this new paradigm shift, where even as a country we have yet to understand if we even have an ambassador designate from the US, there's definitely a shift. We've seen the shift in aid, especially with USAID, which actually I think was very dramatic for Kenya, more so than maybe many other countries, because we do host a lot of the USAID programs here in this country. So what can we do as Africans? And yes, we are not in public sector, but as private sector, to ensure that we remain relevant, our agendas continue, or is it truly going to be a total paradigm shift in how things are done? You did mention that in the US, at the UN this year, at UNGA, you saw lots more private sector companies. People want to engage. We want relevance. We know that engagement between the US and ourselves is very important, but there's definitely a paradigm shift.
There is a paradigm shift. There's
And
no
with CS
doubt.
Monica here, I'm sure
Yeah.
she could also give us
Yeah.
some.
There's no doubt that there's a paradigm shift, particularly as it relates to Africa. But beside that paradigm shift, there's also another shift that is really focused very directly on the private sector and encouraging American companies in ways that I don't know that we have done in that way before. I mean, a lot of people say, well, the president is transactional. So if we understand that the president is transactional, then we're going to have to be transactional in dealing with the president. What I have said, and I believe strongly, is this is an opportunity for Africa. This is an opportunity for African countries, African heads of state, to take charge of their own destinies and set the priorities that they want to set for their people in terms of how they use the massive resources that they have at their disposal. So I'm not sad about it. As my granddaughter said to me the other day, that I wasn't her best friend. And I said, good, I didn't expect to be. And she said, at least be sad about it. I'm not sad about it. I mean, there's some disappointment. There is some worry. We know that many of these programs saved lives. But again, I think this gives an opportunity for countries to take control. And I think it boosts private sector engagement in ways that we have never seen before. So now we used to talk about the three-legged stool, diplomacy, development, and defense. There's a fourth leg, and it's longer than the three legs, and that is the private sector. And I think that's where we're going to see things go in the future. They're going to do a lot of the things that USAID used to do. They're going to get more engaged with people. I mean, look at what Rendeavor is doing. That's not normal. That's extraordinary. They are building sustainable livelihoods for people. And I think they're going to succeed because there's nobody else doing it.
Thank you so much. We'll
Backed by American capital and actually supported by the administration.
You know, we know now, of course, the U.S. administration has opted to boycott the G20 meetings, summit in South Africa. We all know, you know, how we felt about the position taken around certain people who sought refugee status. But maybe just to get a sense from you, what your views are on the U.S. position, boycotting, and really why and what that means for us going forward.
Yeah, I am disappointed. I've said that publicly before. America first also means American leadership in the international on the international stage. And the G20 is a very, very important international stage. And for the US not to be there for I can't even explain the reasons we're not there. It has to do with our relationship with South Africa. But we need allies, and we need to engage with people who are not our allies. One of my approaches to diplomacy is to meet with everybody, meet with friends and foes. You can't correct a problem you have with an adversary if you're not talking to the adversary. So I do think it's a missed opportunity that we will not be there. I understood why the president wouldn't want to be there, given the statements made about South Africa. But we could at least send the Secretary of State. I think Vice President Vance was supposed to go. I'm hoping that maybe there are some lower level people who will be there, assistant secretary level or sub-cabinet level, who will be in the room because we're the top guy there. We are first, and we have to be first at home. Nobody has disagreed with the president's approach to putting America first, but we have to be first elsewhere as well in terms of promoting alliances, building partnerships, and working together in the international community to deal with global problems.
Africa is rich in resources. We essentially by 2050 will have the youngest population, but we know the perception of the continent costs us. I'd like for you to talk about the cost of capital. When you think about how much countries in Africa spend, our budgetary allocations go towards, our debt and our borrowing, and how that's hindering our growing and us really living up to the potential that we as Africans see that we have, and that how that is even impacting private sector, people like Rendeva. So my question is, how can our leaders really shift this perception? I was recently part of a campaign that ran the narrative that Africa is not a risk, it's a return. It's a return on your investment. So how can they ride on that? And how can they boldly step into that narrative without cowing to new administrations like the current US administration, the new administration in the UK and Germany and the Netherlands? Thank you.
Again, I think I said this earlier, African leaders have to take ownership of Africa's prosperity, Africa's growth, the use of African resources, and invest in their own populations. And you look across the continent, there's a lack of investment in people, in young people. And these are going to be the people who are the leaders of the future. Let me see if I can be diplomatic. You guys got a lot of old men running Africa, a lot of old men in positions of authority. And they have not dealt with how to integrate youth into Africa's prosperity, into Africa's future. They're afraid of their youth, and they need to embrace them. I think it's possible. I'm never on the hopeless side of anything. I'm very hopeful it can happen. And I think when we see that shift happen, it's going to be phenomenal on this continent. We all see it. We all want to be here. And we're seeing, happy that you return, that many in the diasporan community are returning because they see it. It's not a basket case. it has the resources. The biggest is people, but it also has huge natural resources that can be exploited for the benefit of the country. There should not be bad roads in countries that are all rich. There should be schools. Guyana just discovered oil. They are investing in free health. The president told me in the next 5 years, he wants to be able to provide free university for students. So he's really thinking very strategically about how Guyana moves from here all the way here with the resources that they have at their disposal. And I think he's going to succeed primarily because he's thinking about it and he's investing his energy in strategizing how to achieve those goals. And I think it can happen here on this continent very, very easily.
I think we can all appreciate that we've had an evening of, great inspiration, great conversations, great reflection. So I'd just like to take this opportunity on behalf of Rendezvous and Tattoo City to sincerely extend our deepest gratitude to Ambassador Linda Thomas-Greenfield for sharing her journey, her wisdom and her passion with us, and to Principal Christine for guiding us through the insightful conversation so beautifully. To our guests, thank you so much for honoring our invite and for spending the evening with us here in Westlands.